Tonight, we go beyond the golden masks and the famous pyramids into the hidden world of Nubia and the forgotten Black Pharaohs, from mysterious pyramids buried in the sands to temples rising again under the sun, to untold stories of kings, queens, and ordinary people. This live stream uncovers secrets that history tried to erase. Do not miss it. History, mystery, and discovery, all revealed live tonight.
Imagine a forgotten chapter of history. Long before Hollywood's Cleopatra and the golden mask of Tutankhamun captured the world's imagination, there was another dynasty, powerful, proud, and nearly erased from the pages of history. The dynasty of African kings who rose from the Kingdom of Kush, far to the south along the Nile, to conquer and rule all of Egypt, the land of the pyramids, the pharaohs, and the gods. They built temples that rivaled those of Thebes, led armies that defeated mighty foes, and fused two great cultures into one. Empires stretching from the Mediterranean to the heart of Africa. And yet, most of the world has never heard their names. Who were these forgotten Black Pharaohs? Why did history almost bury their legacy? And how are archaeologists today uncovering secrets that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt? This is their story. The story of the Black Pharaohs begins in a land often overshadowed by Egypt's towering pyramids and legendary pharaohs, a land called Nubia, in what is today northern Sudan and southern Egypt. For centuries, Nubia was seen as Egypt's neighbor, its trade partner, sometimes its enemy. The Nile linked them, carrying gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic goods from deep Africa into the heart of Egypt. But Nubia was more than just a source of wealth. It had its own kings, its own gods, and a culture shaped by both Africa's interior and Egypt's grandeur. And yet, for much of history, Egypt wrote the story. The pharaohs of Thebes and Memphis filled temples with their names. The scribes of the Nile Valley carved their victories into stone. And Nubia? Often it appeared only as a conquered land, a footnote in Egypt's glory. But history, as we're about to see, is rarely so simple. By the 8th century BCE, Egypt was fractured, its once mighty empire weakened by internal rivalries and foreign invasions. This was the moment Nubia had been waiting for. From its capital at Napata, a line of powerful kings rose with a vision, not just to reclaim Egypt's greatness, but to rule it themselves. And so began one of history's most dramatic reversals of power, a story of ambition, faith, war, and empire building that would shake the ancient world. To understand the rise of the Black Pharaohs, we must journey south, beyond the first cataract of the Nile, where the river twists through rugged deserts and rocky hills, into the heartland of Nubia. Here lay the Kingdom of Kush, a civilization with deep roots stretching back thousands of years. Long before the pharaohs of Egypt carved their first temples, Nubian chiefs were building burial mounds and trading along the Nile's banks. By 2000 BCE, Kush had become Egypt's southern neighbor, sometimes a rival, sometimes a vassal state. Egyptian armies under the Middle and New Kingdoms marched south, building forts, temples, and entire towns to control the gold mines and trade routes of Nubia. But while Egypt sought to dominate, Nubia absorbed. Over centuries, the Kushites adopted elements of Egyptian religion, art, and language, yet kept their African identity alive. They worshipped Amun, the great god of thieves, but also honored their own deities. They built temples in Egyptian style, but their kings were buried beneath steep, small pyramids unique to Nubia. This blend of cultures created something powerful, a kingdom that was both Egyptian and African, familiar yet different, a hybrid civilization that would one day rise above its former conquerors. By the 9th century BCE, as Egypt weakened under rival dynasties and foreign invasions, Kush grew richer and stronger. Its capital at Napata became a religious and political center. Its kings commanded armies, controlled gold mines, and dreamed of something bold, uniting the Nile Valley under their rule. The time was coming when Kush would no longer be Egypt's shadow, but its master. In the year 747 BCE, a new name thundered across the Nile Valley. Piye, the king of Kush, the man who would rise from Nubia's deserts to claim the throne of Egypt itself. Piye was no ordinary ruler. From his capital at Napata, he ruled a kingdom of wealth and warriors, priests and builders. He saw himself not just as a king, but as a divine leader chosen by the god Amun to restore order to a land torn by chaos. For centuries, Egypt had been fractured. Local princes ruled separate cities, squabbling for power while foreign invaders eyed the Nile's riches. To Piye, this was more than an opportunity, it was destiny. Marching north with his armies, Piye moved like a storm through Upper Egypt. City after city surrendered without resistance, their governors swearing loyalty to the Nubian king who claimed to fight not for conquest alone, but for the god's will. At every step, Piye performed rituals, prayed at temples, and presented himself as pharaoh in the truest sense, a man of piety as well as power. Finally, he reached the great city of Memphis, Egypt's ancient capital. After a fierce siege, Memphis fell. For the first time in history, a king from deep Africa now ruled all of Egypt. And Piye. He left behind a record of his victory carved into stone, a document still surviving today, where he wrote with divine confidence, "I am a king, a conqueror, beloved of Amun. None can resist me." Piye returned to Napata, leaving Egypt in the hands of loyal governors. He had no need to remain in the north. Egypt now recognized his authority. He was Pharaoh, the first of the Black Pharaohs. When Shabaka passed away around 705 BCE, the crown went to his successor Shebitku, a king who ruled during one of the most dangerous times in the ancient Near East. Far to the northeast, the Assyrian Empire had risen to terrifying power. with iron weapons, siege engines, and ruthless kings. Assyria had crushed Babylon, Israel, and every kingdom in its path. Now its eyes turned toward Egypt, the ancient land of gold, grain, and gods. Shebitku inherited not only a throne but a storm. He knew that war with Assyria was inevitable. But before the Assyrians reached Egypt, Shebitku faced rebellion within. Some Egyptian princes, fearing both Kushite and Assyrian power, tried to claim independence. Shebitku acted swiftly. He crushed the rebels, secured the Nile Delta, and forged alliances where he could. His goal was survival, to keep Egypt united under Kushite rule before the Assyrian wave crashed upon them all. For a time, he succeeded. The Assyrians were busy elsewhere, and Egypt remained free. Shebitku ruled from Thebes as pharaoh, maintaining temples, honoring Amun, and keeping alive the dream of a united Nile Valley. But in the east, Assyria prepared. Its kings, Sennacherib, then Esarhaddon, saw Egypt as the final jewel in their empire. The stage was set for a clash of civilizations that would soon define Shebitku's successor. When Shebitku died, he left the throne to Taharqa, a king who would become the most famous, and perhaps the most tragic, of all the Black Pharaohs. When Shebitku died around 690 BCE, the throne passed to Taharqa, a king whose name would echo through history as both a warrior and a builder, a man ruling at the very edge of empire and destiny. Taharqa inherited a kingdom facing its greatest threat yet, the unstoppable advance of the Assyrian Empire. Under King Esarhaddon, Assyria had crushed Babylon, dominated the Levant, and now prepared to invade Egypt. But Taharqa was no ordinary king. He was a man of immense ambition, wealth, and faith. Ancient records describe him as a giant in stature, a charismatic leader who inspired loyalty from soldiers and priests alike. Before the storm of war, Taharqa strengthened Egypt's defenses, fortified cities, and built alliances with neighboring kingdoms hoping to resist Assyrian expansion. And yet, he was more than just a general. In Thebes, Memphis, and Nubia, Taharqa launched a golden age of temple construction. He expanded the great temple of Amun at Karnak, built sanctuaries in Nubia, and left monuments from the delta to the deep south, works of faith and power designed to outlast empires. But the Assyrians came. In 674 BCE, Esarhaddon invaded Egypt. Taharqa fought fiercely and, in a stunning victory, repelled the invaders. For a moment, it seemed Egypt might remain free. Yet Assyria returned stronger. In 671 BCE, their armies swept through the delta, capturing Memphis itself. Taharqa retreated to Thebes, then to Nubia, but never surrendered. He launched counterattacks, liberated cities, and defied the greatest empire of his age. To the Assyrians, Taharqa was a rebel king. To Egypt and Kush, he became a legend, a pharaoh who refused to bow. Even as Assyria gained ground, Taharqa's name lived on in temples, stelae, and stories carved into stone, a king who fought for the Nile with sword and spirit alike. When Taharqa died around 664 BCE, the throne passed to his nephew Tanutamani, a man who inherited not an empire, but a kingdom under siege. Egypt had been ravaged by Assyrian invasions. Cities burned, dynasties crumbled, and local princes aligned themselves with foreign powers to survive. The dream of a united Nile Valley under Kushite rule seemed to be slipping away. But Tanutamani was determined. In his inscriptions, he wrote of visions from the god Amun, commanding him to reclaim Egypt and restore its glory. He marched north with his armies, reclaiming cities one by one. For a moment, it seemed as if history might repeat itself, that like Piye before him, Tanutamani would drive out the invaders and unite the two lands once more. In 663 BCE, he even retook Thebes, Egypt's spiritual heart. Temples celebrated his victory. Priests hailed him as pharaoh. The Kushite dream flickered back to life. But the Assyrians struck back with overwhelming force. They stormed Thebes, sacked its temples, and carried off its treasures. Ancient historians wrote that Thebes, the city of 100 gates, was left in ruins. Tanutamani retreated to Nubia. He would continue to rule in the south for years, but Egypt was lost. The age of the Black Pharaohs had ended, yet their legacy endured. Even as Assyria claimed victory, the memory of the Kushite kings, Piye, Shabaka, Shebitku, Taharqa, and Tanutamani, lived on in stone carvings, temples, and the very shape of the Nile Valley's history. They had come from the deserts of Nubia to challenge empires, build monuments, and leave a mark no conqueror could erase.
Do not go anywhere. The story has only just begun. In moments, we dive deeper into the lost Kingdom of Kush, where pyramids rise from the sands, temples whisper forgotten prayers, and the voices of kings and queens return after 3,000 years of silence. On this journey, we will walk through the great temples of Amun at Jebel Barkal, enter the royal pyramids of Meroe, and wander through cities buried beneath the desert for centuries. Here, archaeologists are uncovering palaces, murals, and inscriptions that reveal the secrets of a civilization that once rivaled Egypt, yet kept its own African spirit alive. Stay with us, because what you are about to see may change everything you thought you knew about Nubia and the Black Pharaohs.
Beneath the blazing sun of the Sudanese desert, where the wind howls across empty plains and the Nile cuts like a silver blade through the earth, a forgotten world is slowly rising from the sands. For centuries, travelers crossed these lands without knowing what lay buried beneath their feet. Temples swallowed by time, pyramids hidden by dunes, and entire cities erased from memory. But now, archaeologists armed with satellites, drones, and cutting-edge technology are rewriting history. What they are uncovering is nothing short of astonishing, a civilization as grand as Egypt's, yet with a style, spirit, and legacy entirely its own, the Kingdom of Kush. This is the story of the Nubian civilization. The people who ruled empires, worshipped gods of both Africa and the Nile, built pyramids pointing toward eternity, and then vanished, leaving behind whispers in stone. Today, we follow the trail of archaeologists as they uncover palaces, temples, and secrets long lost beneath the sands. And what they reveal may change everything we thought we knew about Africa's forgotten kingdom. The Kingdom of Kush rose along the Nile in what is today northern Sudan, a land of fierce deserts, fertile valleys, and sacred mountains. For over 1,000 years, it thrived alongside ancient Egypt, sometimes as a rival, sometimes as a partner, and at times as its conqueror. Yet while the pyramids of Giza became global icons, the monuments of Nubia lay buried and forgotten. Sandstorms swallowed temples, shifting deserts erased roads, and entire cities vanished from history's map. Now, in the last few decades, archaeologists are bringing Kush back to life. Using satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and traditional excavation, they have uncovered sprawling temple complexes, royal palaces, and vast cemeteries filled with clues about a civilization that shaped the ancient world. But this story is not just about ruins. It is about people, kings, queens, priests, and merchants whose lives, beliefs, and ambitions created a kingdom of art, power, and mystery. In this journey, we will walk through the great temples of Amun at Jebel Barkal, enter the royal pyramids of Meroe, and wander the streets of forgotten cities emerging from the sand after 2,000 years of silence. The desert has kept its secrets for centuries. Today, it begins to speak. For centuries, the deserts of northern Sudan kept their secrets well. Sandstorms swept across the land, covering temples, burying palaces, and silencing the voices of kings and queens who once ruled here. Travelers passed by, unaware that beneath their feet lay the ruins of a civilization that had rivaled Egypt itself. Then, in the 20th century, and especially in the last 50 years, the silence began to break. Archaeologists from Sudan, Europe, and America launched expeditions into the heart of ancient Nubia. At first they found fragments, a carved stone here, a crumbling wall there. But as the work continued, the desert began to surrender its treasures. In 1916, the ruins of Meroe, capital of the later Kushite kingdom, were mapped in detail. Dozens of pyramids rose from the sand, smaller and steeper than those of Giza, yet hauntingly beautiful against the desert sky. In the 1960s, as the Aswan High Dam threatened to flood ancient Nubian lands, international teams rushed to save monuments before the waters of Lake Nasser swallowed them forever. Temples were dismantled block by block and moved to higher ground. Some, like the Temple of Abu Simbel, were relocated entirely, preserving them for future generations. But the real revolution came with modern technology. Satellites orbiting high above Earth revealed outlines of ancient cities invisible from the ground. Ground-penetrating radar mapped buried temples without turning a single stone. Drones flew over the desert, capturing images of sites too remote or dangerous for humans to reach. In recent years, entire palace complexes have emerged from the sand. Temples to Amun, Apedemak, and Isis stand once more beneath the sun. Royal cemeteries at Nuri and El Kuru revealed pyramids filled with paintings, inscriptions, and artifacts telling the stories of kings long forgotten. Each discovery rewrites history. Each temple, tomb, and inscription brings us closer to understanding a civilization that thrived where the desert now reigns. Among the ruins of Nubia, archaeologists have uncovered not only temples and palaces, but the names, faces, and stories of kings and queens whose memory was almost lost to history. One of the earliest great rulers was King Kashta, the father of Piye, whose campaigns brought Upper Egypt under Nubian control in the 8th century BCE. Inscriptions describe him not just as a conqueror, but as a pious king devoted to Amun, the supreme god of Thebes. Then came Piye, the conqueror who united Egypt and Nubia, leaving behind the famous victory stela at Jebel Barkal. Carved in elegant hieroglyphs, it records how Piye demanded loyalty not only through war, but through religion, insisting that Egyptian rulers submit to him as the chosen son of Amun. The dynasty continued with Shabaka, who preserved ancient religious texts on the famous Shabaka stone, ensuring that Egypt's sacred wisdom would survive for centuries to come. But perhaps the most famous ruler was Taharqa. Depicted in temple carvings with royal crown and muscular frame, he fought the Assyrians, built grand temples from Karnak to Nubia, and became a legendary figure mentioned even in the Bible as a savior king. And it wasn't only kings who ruled Kush. The excavations at Meroe revealed powerful queens known as Kandakes or Candaces. Queen Amanirenas, centuries after the 25th dynasty, famously fought the Romans, signing peace on equal terms, a rare feat in the ancient world. Tombs at El Kuru and Nuri contained walls painted with vivid scenes, kings riding chariots, priests offering sacrifices, gods blessing the rulers of Kush. Each image, each hieroglyph, brought back voices silent for over 2,000 years. Through these discoveries, the kings and queens of Nubia rise again, not as forgotten names in dusty chronicles, but as living rulers whose ambitions, wars, and faith shaped a civilization at the crossroads of Africa and the Nile. While the kings and queens of Kush built temples and fought empires, ordinary people shaped the heartbeat of the civilization. Excavations across Nubia have revealed a vivid picture of daily life, of farmers, merchants, artisans, and priests whose work sustained a kingdom that thrived for centuries. Along the banks of the Nile, farmers cultivated wheat, barley, and dates, using the river's annual floods to enrich the soil. Irrigation canals uncovered near ancient villages show how Kushite engineers managed water in a land where the desert lay just beyond the fields. Markets bustled in cities like Meroe and Napata, where traders sold gold from Nubian mines, ivory from African forests, incense from Arabia, and even exotic animals brought from the heart of the continent. Archaeologists have found pottery, jewelry, and tools, evidence of a thriving economy connecting Africa to the Mediterranean world. Religious festivals filled the streets with music and prayer. At Jebel Barkal, the sacred mountain of Amun, processions carried statues of the gods through temple courtyards, while priests chanted hymns written on papyrus scrolls. Homes made of mud brick, painted with white plaster, lined narrow streets. In some ruins, grinding stones and bread ovens still stand, silent witnesses to the meals families once shared. Children played in courtyards. Fishermen cast nets into the Nile. Craftsmen carved wooden furniture and hammered bronze tools. The pyramids and palaces may tell the story of kings, but these discoveries reveal the lives of the people who gave the kingdom its soul. For centuries, the desert tried to erase them, yet beneath the sand, pieces of pottery, tools of farmers, and paintings on tomb walls whisper of a world once alive with laughter, work, and faith. The Kingdom of Kush spoke through stone. Its kings built monuments not only to honor the gods, but to proclaim their power and identity to the world. Yet the art and architecture of Nubia were never simple imitations of Egypt. They carried a style and spirit entirely their own, shaped by desert winds, African traditions, and centuries of cultural exchange along the Nile. The most striking monuments were the pyramids, rising sharply against the horizon at Nuri, El Kuru, and Meroe. They stood smaller but steeper than the pyramids of Giza, with angles so sharp they seemed like spears pointed toward the sky. Each marked the tomb of a king, queen, or noble, filled with paintings of gods, offerings, and scenes of royal life. Inside some burial chambers, archaeologists have found walls painted with vivid colors, blue skies, golden suns, green fields of the afterlife. These were not just tombs, they were gateways to eternity, built by architects who blended Egyptian beliefs about the afterlife with Nubian artistic traditions. Temples, too, carried this fusion. At Jebel Barkal, the holy mountain of Amun, great columns rose beneath towering cliffs. Reliefs on the walls showed kings offering sacrifices, priests carrying sacred boats, and gods blessing the land of Kush. Sculptors carved statues of rulers with distinctly African features: broad noses, full lips, strong chins, crowns upon their heads blending Egyptian and Nubian designs. It was as if the artists of Kush were saying, "We are heirs of the pharaohs, but we are also children of Africa." Even pottery and jewelry carried unique patterns, geometric shapes, sunbursts, and animal motifs unlike anything in Egypt. Each piece of art, each carved stone, declared a culture confident in its identity, standing at the crossroads of two worlds. Today, many of these pyramids and temples stand in silence. Yet the wind that whistles through their broken doorways still carries the story of builders who dreamed in stone beneath the Nubian sun. Religion lay at the heart of the Kushite kingdom. To the kings and queens of Nubia, power was not just political, it was divine. They believed the gods chose them to rule, protect, and expand their kingdom. Temples rose across the desert like bridges between earth and heaven, each one filled with offerings, hymns, and the smoke of burning incense. The most important deity was Amun, the supreme god of Thebes, adopted from Egypt, but given a Nubian home at Jebel Barkal, the holy mountain whose cliffs were believed to be the very throne of the god himself. Here, kings were crowned in ceremonies blending Egyptian rituals with Nubian traditions, proclaiming them sons of Amun before they set out to conquer or govern. But the Kushites also kept their own spiritual heritage alive. Archaeologists have uncovered temples dedicated to a Paydamak, a lion-headed war god unique to Nubia, often depicted holding bows and spears, a protector of kings and a symbol of strength. Inscriptions from Meroe tell of queens consulting oracles before leading armies, of priests reading the will of the gods from the flight of birds or the patterns of stars. Festivals brought entire cities together, music, dancing, and processions carrying statues of the gods through temple courtyards lit with torches at night. Death itself was surrounded by rich mythology. Tomb paintings show the journey of the soul across rivers and deserts, guided by divine beings toward the afterlife's fields of paradise. Like the Egyptians, the Kushites believed in judgment before the gods, but their art often shows ancestors welcoming the dead, suggesting a faith deeply rooted in family as well as divinity. This blending of Egyptian and Nubian beliefs created a sacred world both familiar and unique, where desert winds carried prayers in 2 languages, and kings built monuments to gods who watched over both the Nile and the savannas beyond. The Kingdom of Kush once built monuments meant to last forever. Yet today, its legacy faces threats the ancient kings could never have imagined. In the 1960s, the construction of the Aswan High Dam brought progress to modern Egypt, but it also brought disaster for many Nubian sites. As the waters of Lake Nasser rose, entire stretches of ancient land vanished beneath the flood. Temples, villages, and cemeteries disappeared under a vast artificial lake, forcing archaeologists into a desperate race against time. Some monuments, like the great temples of Abu Simbel, were saved in a heroic international effort. Block by block, stone by stone, they were moved to higher ground before the floodwaters came. But countless others remain beneath the waves, lost forever. Today, new threats emerge. Shifting desert sands slowly bury ancient pyramids at Meroe and Nuri. Climate change brings harsher winds and sudden floods. Urban growth creeps closer to archaeological sites, while looters and treasure hunters target tombs in remote areas. Sudan's political instability has often made preservation work difficult. Archaeologists sometimes face years of delay before they can return to sites buried under both sand and bureaucracy. Yet there is hope. International teams now use satellite mapping, 3D scanning, and digital reconstruction to record monuments in incredible detail, creating virtual archives even when physical preservation proves impossible. Sudanese scholars, too, are leading efforts to protect and celebrate this heritage, building museums and training a new generation of archaeologists. The battle to save Nubia's legacy continues against time, nature, and neglect. Each pyramid, temple, and tomb saved from ruin keeps alive the memory of a civilization that once defied empires and built dreams in stone. As the sun sinks over the pyramids of Meroe and the sacred cliffs of Jebel Barkal, the wind carries whispers through the desert night. For centuries, the Kingdom of Kush lay silent beneath the sands, its kings and queens forgotten, its temples buried, its cities erased from maps. But today, as archaeologists uncover tombs and temples, as satellites trace lost roads and palaces, the past begins to speak once more. The story of Nubia is not just about ruins. It is about people who built kingdoms in the harshest of lands, who blended African and Egyptian worlds into a single, powerful civilization. It is about artists who carved dreams into stone, priests who carried prayers on the wind, and rulers who dared to challenge the mightiest empires of their time. The sands tried to bury them. History tried to forget them. But the temples rise again. The pyramids stand against the sky, and the voices of Kush return, carried by the desert wind telling us, we were here, we built, we believed, and we will not be forgotten. Today, as we uncover their legacy, we are reminded that Africa's history is deeper than we ever imagined, its stories older than the pyramids of Giza, its voices echoing across time for those willing to listen. So when the desert winds howl across the ruins of Nubia, they carry not silence, but a song 3,000 years old.
Stay with us. The secrets are still unfolding. Up next, we open one of the most chilling and mysterious files in history, the curse of the Black Pharaohs. From the tombs of El-Kuru and Nuri to the pyramids of Meroe, tales speak of a living curse striking down anyone who dared to disturb the kings of Kush. Archaeological missions ending in unexplained deaths, ancient warnings carved in stone, and secrets the sands have guarded for thousands of years. Are these only legends born of fear? Or is the curse of the Black Pharaohs still alive, protecting their legacy to this very day? Stay with us, because what comes next will reveal the truth behind the legend.
Under Sudan's blazing sun, among Meroe's pyramids and Napata's temples, a dark curse spreads fear. Kings ruled with power and faith, queens defied empires, and a deadly legend haunts their tombs for 2,000 years. Travelers tell of archaeologists falling ill after opening royal chambers, explorers vanishing after disturbing sacred graves, accidents following anyone carrying relics from Nubian cemeteries. The curse of the Black Pharaohs. History mixed with terror and mystery. Is it real? Did Kushite kings leave a warning for those disturbing their eternal rest? Or is it only legend, born from accidents, rumors, and human fear of the unknown? Tonight we cross Sudan's desert, through decaying pyramids and silent temples, to uncover the truth behind the curse of the Black Pharaohs. The story of the curse of the Black Pharaohs begins not with science, but with whispers, tales carried by merchants, travelers, and local villagers across centuries of desert winds. Long before modern archaeologists arrived in Sudan, people living near the pyramids of Meroe and the royal cemeteries of Nuri spoke of spirits guarding the tombs of kings and queens. These rulers, they said, were chosen by the gods themselves. Disturbing their rest would invite not just misfortune but divine punishment. When European explorers reached Nubia in the 19th century, they brought back more than maps and artifacts. They returned with stories of workers struck by sudden illness after digging at royal sites, of mysterious accidents involving scholars who opened burial chambers, of desert storms that seemed to rise out of nowhere, as if the land itself resisted intrusion. Newspapers in Europe and America seized on these tales. Headlines spoke of the curse of the Sudanese pharaohs and the wrath of Kushite kings. For readers hungry for mystery and the exotic, these stories were irresistible. The legend grew even stronger after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in Egypt in 1922. When several members of Howard Carter's team died unexpectedly, the world became fascinated with the idea of a pharaoh's curse, and journalists began linking it to Nubia's Black Pharaohs as well. Soon, the story of the curse spread far beyond Sudan. It appeared in magazines, novels, even early films, mixing history with superstition until the line between fact and fiction nearly vanished. But beneath the sensational headlines, real questions remained. Were these curses simply stories? Or did something truly strange happen around the tombs of Kushite kings? The 19th and early 20th centuries brought waves of archaeologists and treasure hunters into the deserts of Sudan. Armed with shovels, cameras, and dreams of glory, they came to uncover the secrets of the Black Pharaohs. But along with statues and inscriptions, they also uncovered stories that would haunt them and feed the legend of the curse. In 1820, Italian explorer Giuseppe Ferlini dynamited several pyramids at Meroe, searching for gold. Locals warned him not to disturb the tombs, saying the spirits of kings guarded their eternal sleep. Ferlini laughed off the warnings. He left with treasure, but also with rumors of workers falling ill, storms destroying camps, and guides disappearing in the night. Decades later, in 1885, during the British military campaigns in Sudan, soldiers camped near the pyramids reported strange occurrences. Camels bolting at night, tents collapsing without cause, and men struck by sudden fever after entering tombs. Officers joked about the curse of the Black Kings, but some refused to sleep near the burial sites. In the 1920s, as Sudan came under Anglo-Egyptian rule, archaeologists led by George Reisner excavated royal cemeteries at Nuri and El Kuru. His team uncovered the tombs of kings like Piye and Taharqa, giants of Kushite history. Within weeks, 2 workers died from heat stroke, one from a snake bite, and another fell ill under mysterious circumstances. Local newspapers eagerly linked these deaths to the ancient curse. One journalist wrote, "It is as if the kings of Kush reach out from their tombs, punishing those who disturb their sacred rest." Of course, archaeologists insisted the deaths had natural explanations: heat, disease, accidents. But the legend had already taken root. Each discovery brought new headlines, each tragedy adding fuel to the fire. By mid-century, the curse of the Black Pharaohs had become a global story, a mix of history, myth, and fear carried on the desert winds. Beyond the myths and headlines, the ruins of Nubia tell a story carved in stone, a story of kings, queens, gods, and rituals that shaped the Kingdom of Kush for nearly 1,000 years. Inscriptions from the temples of Jebel Barkal, the sacred mountain of Amun, describe the coronation of Kushite kings. They tell of rulers like Piye, Shabaka, and Taharqa, chosen by the god Amun himself to unite Egypt and Nubia under divine rule. These texts speak of piety, offerings, and festivals, but never of curses placed upon their tombs. Archaeologists studying the pyramids of Nuri and El Kuru have uncovered painted burial chambers filled with images of gods welcoming the dead into the afterlife. The walls show feasts, music, and offerings to deities like Osiris, Isis, and Amun, blending Egyptian traditions with Nubian style. Yet nowhere do the inscriptions mention vengeance from beyond the grave. The kings of Kush sought immortality through the favor of the gods, not through terror. Their tombs were places of passage, guiding the soul toward eternal life, not traps for the living. So where did the idea of a curse come from? Historians believe it may have grown from ancient taboos surrounding burial sites. In many cultures, disturbing the dead was considered dangerous, inviting spiritual unrest or divine anger. When outsiders, especially Europeans in the 19th century, began looting tombs, locals may have warned them with tales of supernatural punishment. Over time, these warnings blended with real accidents, desert hardships, and the human love of mystery to create the legend we now call the Curse of the Black Pharaohs. In truth, the kings of Kush left behind monuments of faith and power, not threats from the afterlife. The curse, it seems, was written not on the walls of tombs, but in the imaginations of those who entered them. In the Kingdom of Kush, religion shaped every aspect of life and death. The Kushite kings saw themselves not only as rulers, but as divine intermediaries between the gods and their people. At the heart of their faith stood Amun, the great god of Thebes, whose cult stretched from Egypt deep into Nubia. Temples at Jebel Barkal, carved into cliffs and rising beneath the sacred mountain, became centers of both political power and spiritual authority. But the afterlife held special significance. Like the Egyptians, the Kushites believed death was not an end but a passage, a journey through trials, judgments, and transformations leading to an eternal paradise. Royal burials reflected this belief in every detail. Pyramids at Nuri, El Kuru, and later Meroe housed kings and queens with treasures, offerings, and texts to guide their souls. Walls bore paintings of divine boats sailing toward the sun god, of Osiris welcoming the dead into the afterlife, of ancestors gathered to greet the departed king. Priests performed rituals of purification before sealing tombs. Offerings of food, wine, and incense were left for the gods and the spirit of the deceased. Some tombs contained books of the afterlife written in hieroglyphs and Meroitic script, prayers meant to protect the soul against dangers on its cosmic journey. To the Kushites, disturbing a tomb was not merely theft. It was a violation of cosmic order, a sin against both gods and kings. This belief may have seeded the idea of curses, not as deliberate magic, but as warnings rooted in deep spiritual fear, that those who defy sacred spaces risk divine wrath. Even so, no text from Kush calls down plagues or death on intruders. The fear came later, from storytellers, explorers, and journalists who turned reverence into legend. As the 20th century advanced, archaeologists, historians, and scientists began to re-examine the so-called Curse of the Black Pharaohs with a more critical eye. Many of the mysterious deaths surrounding excavations, they argued, had perfectly natural explanations. Heat stroke claimed lives in the brutal desert sun, infection spread quickly before the age of antibiotics, and accidents in unstable tombs were tragically common. In some cases, modern medicine provided even clearer answers. Studies of ancient tombs in Egypt and Nubia revealed traces of toxic molds and bacteria that can survive for centuries in sealed chambers. When explorers opened these tombs, they may have inhaled spores causing respiratory illness, fever, or even death, events later blamed on the curse. Environmental dangers also played a role. Hidden shafts, collapsing walls, venomous snakes and scorpions made excavation hazardous. The desert itself was often deadlier than any supernatural power. Historians also noted the influence of media sensationalism. Newspapers in the 19th and early 20th centuries loved tales of mystery and danger. Linking unexplained deaths to an ancient curse sold far more copies than mundane explanations like infection or dehydration. Psychologists added another layer: the power of suggestion. Workers who believed in the curse might experience stress, anxiety, even psychosomatic illness after entering tombs. Fear itself, they argued, could become deadly. By mid-century, most scholars agreed the curse was a blend of coincidence, natural hazards, and human imagination, turned into legend by journalists and storytellers. Yet even today, some insist the deaths and disasters defy rational explanation. And perhaps that uncertainty is why the legend refuses to die. Why do tales of curses and haunted tombs grip us so deeply? Psychologists suggest that humans are drawn to the mysterious and the forbidden. Ancient tombs, sealed for thousands of years, awaken both curiosity and fear. They are portals to worlds long vanished, places where the line between life and death, history and myth seems fragile and thin. Stories of curses also offer a sense of cosmic justice. When tomb robbers fall ill, or explorers meet tragic ends, people see it as proof that the ancient dead can still defend themselves, that greed and disrespect carry supernatural consequences. There is also the thrill of the unknown. Science explains so much of our modern world, but curses hint at forces beyond reason, remnants of a time when gods and spirits ruled human imagination. Writers and filmmakers quickly realized this power. From early 20th century novels to Hollywood blockbusters like The Mummy, the idea of the Pharaoh's curse became a cultural phenomenon, mixing archaeology with adventure, danger, and the supernatural. In Sudan and Egypt, local traditions kept the stories alive. Villagers near the pyramids of Meroe spoke of ghostly figures walking among the tombs at night. Priests in ancient texts warned of disturbing the rest of kings and gods. Each tale added another layer to the legend. Anthropologists note that such myths help societies protect sacred spaces. By surrounding tombs with fear and mystery, communities ensured that the resting places of ancestors and rulers remained undisturbed for generations. So the curse endures, not because of proof, but because it speaks to something deep in the human heart. Our respect for the dead, our fear of the unknown, and our love for stories where history and mystery intertwine. As the sun sets over the pyramids of Meroe and the sacred mountain of Jebel Barkal, the desert grows silent once more. The wind moves through broken temples, across sand-covered tombs, carrying with it 3,000 years of memory. We have followed the trail from ancient inscriptions to modern excavations, from whispered legends to scientific explanations. And what have we found? The curse of the Black Pharaohs lives on, not in the tombs themselves, but in the stories we tell. History shows us kings who built temples, united kingdoms, and dreamed of eternity. Archaeology reveals their art, their rituals, their lives carved in stone. Science explains the deaths and disasters once blamed on supernatural forces, yet the legend endures. Because perhaps the real curse is not death or disaster, but the power of memory. The kings of Kush wanted to be remembered forever, their names spoken long after their bodies turned to dust. And so they are. Every time a journalist writes about the curse, every time a filmmaker shows a haunted tomb, every time we stand before the pyramids of Nubia in awe, the Black Pharaohs achieved what they desired most: immortality through story. Fact or myth? History or legend? Perhaps both. For in the end, the desert keeps its secrets. And as long as the wind whispers through the ruins, the curse of the Black Pharaohs will never truly die.
Tonight, we go beyond the golden masks and the famous pyramids into the hidden world of Nubia and the forgotten Black Pharaohs, from mysterious pyramids buried in the sands to temples rising again under the sun, to untold stories of kings, queens, and ordinary people. This live stream uncovers